All right, so explain the dangers of the U.S. traveling across the Atlantic during World War II, much like World War One, but a little bit more advancements now to protect ourselves. All right, finally, explain Operation Torch. Where and why did the U.S. and Great Britain invade where they did? There you go. So don't want to give it away, but you guys should all know from yesterday. Then your response, maybe detail about a few key figures we talked about yesterday, their role within the battlefield there, and then what this is going to set up for. All right, there you go. All right, okay. So yesterday we talked about the travel across the Atlantic for the United States, and it's much like World War One, right? So what are some of the dangers that the United States has to face as they're making this trip across the Atlantic? Paul, go ahead. German U-boats. Yeah, good job. The biggest ones, the German U-boats, right? These submarines. Okay. And they were still picking off a lot of these merchant ships, a lot of these different types of passenger ships carrying soldiers, military equipment all across the Atlantic Ocean to try to help support Great Britain in this war in Europe, right? So, yeah, that was one of the biggest dangers. Okay. So when it came to these risks, when it came to the challenge of making it across the Atlantic Ocean, right, much like World War One. All right, to try to protect themselves, right, from these German U-boats, what would the U.S. ships do? What kind of system did they follow? What kind of technology was used to help maybe find and pick out these U-boats underwater? Connor.
They went in a convoy system.
Good.
They used radar to locate U-boats.
Awesome. Yeah, good job, right? So when it came to the convoy system, again, utilized to try to move in packs, right? In case maybe one of the ships were targeted, they can maybe save the crew, save the equipment, and continue to move across the Atlantic Ocean. All right, good. Radar, right now, utilized to help depict and find these U-boats, these submarines out in the open water. So yeah, radar in World War One, I guess you say it was starting to come about, but it wasn't really used heavily like you see in World War Two because, well, it was still an upcoming device, a new piece of technology in World War One. All right, so yeah, radar to find these U-boats, these submarines. And then yeah, depth charges. Okay, so these depth charges, they would launch literally right up in the air and then dive deep down underwater. And they would blow up, and sometimes, right, you'd actually destroy the submarine underwater. And you know it because you'd see the oil literally rising to the surface of the water. Right, so then you knew you got the submarine or the U-boat underneath. Right, also, it would allow and push forward the submarines to surface, okay, causing different types of air pressures for them to surface, and then you can take them out of the water. You can shoot at them and destroy. All right, so yeah, okay, with these convoy systems, depth charges, radar, and moving in a what? Do they move in a straight line? Paul? Yeah, good job. So it's zigzags. Along the coast of the United States and along the coast of Great Britain, they also utilize the Air Force. So obviously Great Britain, RAF, the Royal Air Force, and the United States, their Air Force, to try to fly over top of these ships, try to depict any of these U-boats that were maybe in the water. They could see them literally right through the surface of it from being up higher, but that was only a limited range. And once you got out in the middle Atlantic Ocean, well, forget about it, right? There's no way that they could have this air cover to maybe see where these ships are located. All right, again, more of reconnaissance than anything. So yeah, that's something. Okay, good. All right, so Operation Torch. Where did this happen? Where did this happen? Was it in Europe? Did we go guns a-blazing, tearing them up? Awesome. Yeah, good job, right? So North Africa. Good, good, good. So why North Africa? Why was Germany there? Why were the Axis powers there? Italy, right? Why were they there? Why?
They wanted to control the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, good job. The Mediterranean Sea. We've been talking about the Mediterranean Sea ever since the start of this course, right? When it came to this trade that was funneled through there, right? The Renaissance period, you remember talking about that, which allowed Italy to become such a strong power, an influential power during the time of the Renaissance where this rebirth occurred. All right, good. So yeah, trade through the Mediterranean. Okay. Also, you got to imagine too when it comes to resources, materials like oil, right, North Africa. But at the same time, right, if you can control North Africa, you can prevent, maybe if the Allies do come in, right, you can prevent them in setting up these different types of air bases to target Germany or Italy, right? So air superiority is going to be something that we talk about today. And as the Allied powers are moving into Italy, right, we'll mention about how they have the ability now to target many of these manufacturing sites, these key industrial areas all throughout Germany, and yeah, even the northern part of Italy to try to stop this production of goods and materials. So yeah, we'll mention that here soon. So with North Africa, we talked about a few key figures, right? So as we're getting involved in North Africa, why there though again? Why there though again for the United States or Great Britain? Why are we attacking right there? Connor? Awesome. Yeah, good job. So like World War One, we just weren't prepared for this style of fighting. But with World War Two, things have got a little bit different, right? A lot of it different. So when it comes to the technology, when it comes to the strategies, the use of tanks on the battlefield, we need to try to prepare ourselves. We need to get our feet wet, right, in this new style of warfare. So yeah, right. This was a good starting point for us to try to get adapted to the conflict. All right, so the bulk of the German army is focused where? Where are they focused? We talked about this on Friday of last week and reviewed it yesterday. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, good job, right, with the Soviet Union. So again, they are sending pretty much everything they have at Stalingrad, right, with Operation Barbarossa. And this is allowing to maybe see an ease up point for the United States and Great Britain to enter this conflict in North Africa. Good, good. So key figures, who did we talk about yesterday? Who you mentioned briefly? Oh, what? Yeah, good job. We talked about George Patton. Good. So as he's getting kind of acclimated to this fighting, right, using these tank divisions, okay. And when you look at U.S. tanks compared to the German tanks, well, they're totally different when you look at technology-wise. But when you come talk about sheer numbers, quantity, well, we have that as an asset. But in any case, right, Patton's leading the charge there. Who else for the Allied powers do we talk about? For Great Britain. Paul. Yeah, good job, Montgomery. Good. And they find success in North Africa. So much so that Great Britain is finally jumping up in the air, right? That the U.S. is joining this conflict. Again, they're getting bombarded by the German Luftwaffe with Blitz for many, many months. And now that the U.S. is finally jumping in, it's like, well, okay, I know it's obviously not northern France, but North Africa, we can finally try to start maybe a two-front war for them. Maybe we can try to push them back. And they actually have celebrations, ringing bells all across Great Britain because the U.S. finally joined it. All right, good. And then who are they up against? Who are they up against? We'll talk about this guy later down the road too, along with Patton, right, later in the war. But who else? Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, good job, right? Erwin Rommel with Desert Fox, right? So he's known as his time in North Africa, right, dominating that landscape for a large majority of time. And we'll even mention him when we get to the D-Day invasion. How he's in charge of setting up the German defenses, creating this Atlantic wall, this west wall, as they describe it, trying to make it impenetrable for the Allied forces. All right, so with North Africa taken, okay, is allowing the United States to maybe launch another invasion, Great Britain to launch another invasion into Italy, right? They call that the soft underbelly. When you're looking at the weakest link of the Axis powers, well, it's definitely it, right? So with that, they can utilize this means of this advance in North Africa to just jump to Sicily, that small island off the coast of Italy, the southern part, and then just propel itself up. And as they're capturing this land, which we'll talk about, we now have the ability to set up air bases to target many key industrial areas in Germany. And the best way to eliminate an enemy, right, your opposition, is destroy their manufacturing, destroy their resources. And that's what we're doing. All right, so here are your terms. All right, I got a few terms detailing about types of bombing, which is good to know. It's pretty easy to understand too. We got the invasion of Sicily and Italy. Okay, so just briefly explain it. The Tuskegee Airmen, which we'll focus a little bit more towards the end of today's lesson. Maybe even an assignment. Oh, who knows? 2 minutes left? 3 minutes? We'll see.
Hey, no.
Whoa, quiet, please. Thank you. The Tehran Conference. All right, so this is a conference that's important because this is setting up more of an alliance, more of discussions between the Allied powers, including the Soviet Union. Oh, geez. Okay, here we go. So Stalin is finally beaten up with the Allied forces. Saturation bombing and strategic bombing. There you go. Hey, what's going on? Is she on another field trip today? Do you think I can maybe borrow her next period? All right. All right. Well, thank you. Bye. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the invasion of Sicily and Italy today. Okay, Tuskegee Airmen, as the Allied powers are now gaining control of the skies over Europe, which is obviously if you have control of the skies, you can bombard your enemy, then chances are you're going to win this. All right, we'll talk about the Tehran conference towards the end, and then these two forms of bombing. So, saturation bombing. What is it? What do you think? Saturation bombing. Go ahead, Chris.
It's on a specific area that target.
Yeah, good job, right? So, unfortunately, right, when you think about warfare, civilians do get caught in the crossfire, in this case with bombing runs. Right? We already talked about the Blitz and how brutal it was, right? When you look at these bombing runs on London and many of these key cities and targeting civilian structures, right? Infrastructure. And it's, again, unfortunate. It's terrible to hear about, think about, but those are the harsh realities of war. right? And we had talked about Operation Barbarossa, right? As Germany was marching into the Soviet Union and brutally taking over a lot of these towns and villages, and yeah, having their way with the Soviets, which I don't need to detail a little bit more. I don't need to detail more about that. All right, so in any case here, with saturation bombing, this is constant bombing over a large scale, large area, right? And yeah, civilians do get caught in the crossfire, right? They do get caught in these bombing runs and these efforts. And with that, may have hit buildings and homes, right? As these key areas are targeted. Strategic bombing. So it says in the name, right? You're targeting certain areas, certain locations, right? As we have these missile systems, it's a lot easier now to just focus, maybe even a drone, a missile, right, at a direct target, trying to eliminate any type of civilian losses. So now more than ever, we have this ability to strategically target key people, right? Even, right? We can focus on one person if need be, but even just certain homes and areas where you can just target, let's say, an industrial building, a factory. And World War II, again, strategic bombing, it's a lot harder than obviously now with these guided missiles, but back then they just target these key industrial areas, right? Maybe even different forms of transportation like railroad beds, and try to destroy and disrupt any type of movement of supplies and materials and soldiers. So it's just strategic bombing. It's a little bit more of a direct target. All right, so as Operation Torch was a success and the United States is gaining footing, well, now they're going to look to invade Italy, right? Now the goal is to try to move their way up into Europe and start a second front for the Germans here in Europe. And again, Germany's focused pretty heavily on Stalingrad, right? And now the Soviets are gaining momentum and pushing Germany back. Right? So with that, you can see how this front in the Eastern Front, it's brutal. It's terrible. So much so that over 27 million Soviets died in this war alone, right? When you look at the United States, 500,000. So it's not really comparable. And we'll talk with the Tehran conference how Joseph Stalin's really amping up more effort for an even third front, right? Where the United States needs to do a little bit more to try to bring on a second, maybe even third front, to pull away some of these resources Germany has, troops that Germany has from the Eastern Front, to try to shore it up a little bit more. So for that, okay, this invasion of Italy and Sicily happens directly right after Operation Torch. It's called Operation Husky. All right, so if you guys want to write it down, you can. But with Operation Husky, they're looking to invade the small island of Sicily first. Okay, so it's like kind of like an island hopping way, right? So as they solidify Sicily, okay, they can look to maybe even target Italy and its mainland, okay, internally, try to capture Rome. And once you capture Rome, the capital, chances are this is pretty much over. But Italy does hold on for a little bit, the northern part, okay, where Mussolini will try to seek refuge, try to flee, which we'll talk a little bit more about him and what happens to him here soon enough. But as they capture Sicily, mostly British and Canadian forces move into this small island of Sicily, and the United States is the one that's really going to jump directly internally of Italy. Again, because we've been sitting out of this war for a majority of time, and Great Britain has taken its licks, right? Especially with the Blitz. So they're prompting the U.S. to jump into it a little bit more. So yeah, when it comes to casualties, when it comes to deaths in this invasion, we took a little bit more than what Great Britain would have had, Canada would have had. But in any case, this was a very successful mission, right? Again, it took a lot of losses, but for the United States, as we're moving into Italy, we are diving in more of a invasion into the mainland, into the internal part of Italy. So like I said, Great Britain and Canada focusing heavily on Sicily, and the U.S. is going to actually, U.S. troops, invasion points are going to go right directly where Rome's located. So as they're diving in, they're pretty much causing a two-front, right, in this Italian invasion. Can Italy do it by themselves? Do you think they need support from Germany? Yeah. So for Hitler, he sees this more as a thorn in the side. It's like, hey, Italy, pull your weight a little bit more. And he actually has to bring forces from the Eastern Front to try to solidify, obviously, Italy a little bit more, which, again, weakens the Eastern Front, which allows for the Soviet Union to keep pushing Germany back. And even pushing them back, which we'll mention, is going to be a race back to Berlin. Okay, from the west, you have Great Britain, United States, and from the east, you got the Soviet Union. Their goal is to try to push Germany back to Berlin, the capital. So with this successful invasion of Italy, now the United States, the Allied powers, has an ability to set up what? I talked a little bit about this at the start of class, where they can target, strategically bomb, and unfortunately, yeah, saturation bombing of different locations in Germany. Yeah, good job. They can set up air bases, right? Again, controlling the skies is very important, right? Especially during a time of warfare when you're looking in Europe, right? At this point, if you can target Germany and its mainland, its homeland, well, you can destroy their industries, their factories, their production. And let's face it, Great Britain, yeah, they're going to firebomb many locations to civilian areas to try to get back at Germany from the Blitz. So yeah, it's unfortunate to hear about, but yeah, there were some civilian targets too with these bombing runs. All right, one group, like I mentioned already through the terms, the Tuskegee Airmen, okay, they were very successful, and this was one of the first African American fighter groups of the United States that was trying to clear an open path for these bombers across Germany, across Germany, into these key industrial areas. So they would fly these Mustangs, these different types of fighter planes, having dogfights above the country of Germany, across and over top of these industrial areas. So their goal is to try to protect these bombers, okay, in order to try to successfully take out a lot of these key industries and factories all throughout Germany. And they were very successful, right? You can only imagine, too, this word gets back to Adolf Hitler. It's like, oh, here he's talking about this Aryan race, this Aryan culture of Germany. This obviously white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and this African-American fighter group, very successful taking out these German pilots, the Luftwaffe, and eventually controlling the skies. This is only going to anger him even more and more, as his ideology is just obviously thrown to the side here. So this fighter group especially was very successful at just clearing out the ways and clearing the skies for these bombers to have successful missions over top of Germany. And by 1943, the Allied powers take control of the skies. And again, they can continue this bombardment until really the end, until Germany is crippled, until they can't keep up with production, and eventually their resources will be taken out, their transportation, and they won't be able to defend themselves really well. So with these successful bombing runs, this is going to ramp up more efforts to start a third front, okay, which we'll know eventually as the D-Day invasion. How Great Britain, the United States, Canadian forces will enter northern France and start this third front, which is going to be brutal fighting. But with these bombers, they're taking out key locations to help ease up a lot of the supplies, ease up a lot of the transportation of these supplies and reinforcements to the front lines on the Western Front, okay, along the beaches of Normandy. So yeah, this is very successful. And it just shows that Germany is now in target, okay, that they are now getting bombarded, which throughout this war, were they? No, right? So finally now, the Allied powers have control of the skies. And from here on out, Germany is just going to get pushed back. All right, the Tehran Conference. What's so important about that? You guys had that one term, the Tehran. Why?
It was the first time all three of the Allied powers met together in one place.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, good. Yeah, so with the Allied powers here, Stalin, you have Churchill, you have FDR. They meet together for the first time at Tehran, right? And this is in Iran. And the goal is to it's Iran. Good. So Tehran right here in Iran. They meet there, okay, for the first time. And you got to imagine too, for Joseph Stalin here, this is the first time where he's going to plead his case. It's like, hey, we lost a lot of people here with Operation Barbarossa. We did a lot here when it came to the defenses of Stalingrad, and now we're pushing Germany back, right? We need a little bit more from you guys, right? Okay, so when you look at the casualties, you look at the number of deaths, when you look at the people that were brutally killed, right, in this war, you can only imagine, right, the Soviets have a better hand to play, okay? And for Stalin, he's pleading to FDR, he's pleading to Churchill and saying that we need to start another front, especially in northern France, to try to really eliminate this threat, Germany, and push it back to their multiple orders. Okay, so he's saying, hey, I did everything I could. I threw everything at the German army and halted them, stopped them, and now they're on the move back, right? Now they're retreating. Okay, starting a third front now in northern France, well, this will be sooner or later the end of Germany, okay? And we just can't allow the Third Reich to be around anymore. So already we have troops on the ground in Italy, okay, obviously in the Eastern Front of the Soviet Union. And now if we get some troops down in obviously in northern France, then this three-front war is just going to be too much for Germany. So what is that invasion? What is talked about? What are the plans laid out for this invasion? Well, the D-Day invasion. Yeah, good job. So at the Toronto Conference, its significance, make sure you write it down. It's the first meeting between the big three. Right? You got Churchill, you got FDR, and you got Stalin. First meeting with these three men. And what was talked about is starting this third front, okay, with the D-Day invasion. So do you know who's going to be in charge of leading this invasion? What? Well, Eisenhower, good job. Hey, there's a picture of him over there behind the World War II, though. Right, so there's Eisenhower. Okay, he's going to be the Supreme Allied Commander, right? And he's going to lead this charge, this planned invasion of northern France, the D-Day invasion. So that's the significance of the Toronto Conference. Again, who controls the skies now? 1943, Connor. The Allied powers, right? We're laying waste to a lot of these key industrial areas of Germany. They're finally being strike at their homeland. And a lot of that comes to the thanks of, right, the Tuskegee Airmen. Not too long ago, it was a State of the Union speech. I believe it was in 2018 or 19. One of the men of the Tuskegee Airmen that you're going to read about, he was actually awarded, a medal by President Trump, which is amazing to hear about one of these men that fought in World War II, especially with Tuskegee Airmen. He's still alive today, right? Think about it, it's a long time. And for him to be recognized then, right, it's just amazing to hear about. I don't think he passed away. I don't want to say he did because I don't know. But obviously you can imagine he's pretty old. But again, very, very heroic missions. You got to imagine too, in the United States, okay, there's issues with segregation at this time and problems with the civil rights movement that didn't happen yet. So when it comes to it, right, when it comes around, a lot of these men are fighting for a country that obviously in many places don't represent their views or their values or just who they are. So just thinking about how this war brought our country together is something to talk about. All right, so here is your assignment. The Tuskegee Airmen. I just published it for you. So you read about it. It's an article that I think you'll find very interesting. Charles McGee, his name is. He is the one that was represented and one of the leaders of this flight group that was given that award at that State of the Union address. So you click on it, and here's the article. Takes you right to the website link, which you guys should have access to. If you don't, let me know. I'll make sure that I can unblock it then. And then here are the questions attached. There's 8 questions. All right, so you guys know the drill. Have this finish up for tomorrow, and we'll move on tomorrow. We're going to continue to talk, and we actually might transition back to the Pacific Theater here before we get to the D-Day invasion. Great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, we will go to the Battle of Midway then. And we'll get back to the D-Day invasion.